Hey there, welcome to Educate. My name is Vasudha Chopra, and for the purpose of today's lesson, I'm going to take you through the most fascinating topic in psychology themed as intelligence. So, have you ever wondered why one person is more intelligent than another person? Right? Also, have you ever been named or have you ever been called Mr. Smarty Pants or Brainiac or a nerd ever before? Do these terms sound familiar to you? But in real, defining intelligence is a lot more trickier than just calling people smart. So, what is intelligence? Is intelligence about the general skills and abilities? Or is it about being creative and very innovative? Does intelligence have anything to do with the genetics or with the nurturing that you receive? Today's lesson will explore just that. Interestingly, there have been very many intelligence tests which help you to identify more intelligent individuals than less intelligent individuals. But their history is pretty dark. By that, we mean literally dating it back to the Nazis' time. However, let's roll and let's unravel intelligence together. As we look at today's lesson, the chapter is named as Variations in Psychological Attributes. So, do we notice that all of us, we vary drastically in the way we present ourselves to the world, right? You and your best friend might be two individuals who think absolutely alike. However, there might be some ways in which you both differ from each other. Right? These differences account for something known as individual differences. It's these differences that allow us to experience our worlds differently from each other. Let's explore some key terms which will help you to understand the rest of the chapter as we go. So let's look at some of the key terms. Let's look at some of the key terms. If you can just go through some of the key terms listed here. Just breeze through some of these key terms. All right. We have a bit of a think tank. So I love to do this thing known as think tank, wherein I'll pause you to think about some topics, some ideas, which will help you to gather more intel about from your own life about what we're talking about, right? And it'll help you to apply. So here's your think tank, guys. The first think tank is, how are we different from each other? In real life, are we really different from even the one person who is so much like us? Right? If yes, how is it that we're different? The next thing that I'd want you to think about is, what is it that sets you and this person you're so alike with apart? Last off, how is it that two best friends who are so similar, they experience very, very different realities? So can we take a couple of minutes to please think about this? Now that you're done thinking about it, we can understand the concept of individual differences. So, of course, two best friends who are so alike in their preferences, in their likes, in their interests, yet experience very different realities. You know, we can account for those realities to this thing called as personal traits. Can I say that all of us are born with traits which are very unique to us? And of course, these traits, they emit behaviors, right? These behaviors are those actions which we act upon based out of our own individual thoughts, right? And of course, all of this is wrapped in this external or internal little context which creates itself as the situations. Sometimes these situations are external, sometimes these circumstances and situations are internal. But this is the reason why all of us are different from each other. So if you can look at the image to your right, it has a different variety of children with different emotions on their faces. If you observe them carefully, you will notice that there's one, the first one, he looks to be furious. The other child seems to be cringing. The one at the third place seems to be, contemplating someone. So it goes so forth. As you look at these variety of emotions, do we experience these emotions from time to time? Sometimes this could be internally felt due to whatever is going on within us. Other times it can be experienced based out of whatever we're feeling on the outside, right? Whatever feelings come to us from the circumstances on the outside. So the distinctiveness in how we feel, how we behave, how we act, comes because of the behavior patterns that we emit, and they also come because of the person's characteristic. Now, if there's one individual who is very calm and sober, and he tends to be put up in an environment which is very aggressive, what do you think would happen to him? Would he be forced to be a little aggressive from time to time, or maybe after a lapse of time? That's the distinctiveness which causes us to be different from each other. Another interesting concept that I want you guys to explore is known as situationism. So, have you noticed, have you wondered why it happens that sometimes you're caught up, cut. Sorry, please cut this. We'll do this again. Another concept that you and I will explore together is called as situationism. Do our circumstances shape who we are? Is it true that whatever circumstances are headed our way, maybe positive or negative, they tend to let us be a particular way? Right? So these situations can be again caused internally, they could be caused externally, but they do somehow are a recipe to the way we behave in that particular day. So human behavior is a result, guys, of both internal and external factors. All of the situations which we experience in our everyday, those circumstances, they all are placed in a way that they influence us. Right? Which is why at the beginning of the day, how you feel is literally how your day plays out. Okay? If you're feeling very happy and chirpy in the beginning of the day, it's most likely to happen that most of your day will go happy and chirpy, if you've noticed. However, if you do get grumpy or grizzly through the day, you will notice that more of the grumps and grizzles find you. Right? So the situation actually gets you to be influenced by it, and it tends to have a hold on you. This is what is called as situationism. An interesting example is listed here. So for example, if there's a person who is absolutely aggressive, but in front of an authority figure, he may act in a very submissive manner, right? Because he knows that his aggressiveness will not be acceptable. So that is situationism here. Our third keyword to understand this chapter better is assessment. Do we like assessments? I'm sure most of us don't. However, assessment, guys, is of two types. There is a formal assessment, there is an informal assessment. Why we're talking about assessment is because intelligence needs to be assessed. To be able to find out about being more intelligent or less intelligent, assessment is a very handy tool. So of course, when it comes to being formally assessed, any kind of formal assessment is something that is structured, it's very objective, it's standardized. On the contrary, something that is very informal is something that's open to subjectivity and may be different for different individuals, right? Okay, so whenever we do any kind of assessment in psychology to assess its various attributes, we do measure all kinds of abilities, we measure all kinds of behaviors and personal qualities. These are absolutely beautifully scored through real validity and reliability of tests, right? Which ask you very interesting questions based on these three aspects, and the scores of which then are able to predict that attribute of psychology which you're trying to measure. So very interestingly, psychological tests, they measure personalities, they measure behaviors, they measure your anxiety level, they measure your adjustment, they measure about your sexuality. They also measure very beautifully all about your intelligence. Okay, I hope you're with me. If there are questions, please post and we'll get back to you in the comments section in case if you have additional questions. All right. Now, something which is very interesting about intelligence, guys, is the fact that it's not linear. Okay. So, if you're ever wondering what intelligence looks like, intelligence is not always a straight road. You're not always going up ahead to becoming more intelligent. It is possible that you become less intelligent too on your trail, right? Of course, intelligence is something that is complicated, but it is not very complex. Sorry, cut. The next interesting thing that we need to understand before we really get into the chapter is a little bit about these psychological attributes. Okay, so when I talk about these attributes, please note that these attributes are not linear. That means you're not always becoming more intelligent as you grow with age or experience. It can happen that you become less intelligent too, right? Interestingly, intelligence is not very complicated as most of you may think it to be, but it is quite complex. Okay, and the other interesting domain here is the fact that intelligence is multi-dimensional. Okay, when I say multi-dimensional, it essentially means that there are some parts of your intelligence which might become more as you grow. However, there might be some other parts which might become less interesting, or perhaps it's only because of your focused interest that they may become a little weaker in their abilities. For example, it is commonly said that old people, they somehow become more intelligent with age. However, physically their condition might deteriorate as they grow older, which is what is meant by it being multidimensional. Okay, so some aspects of your abstract thinking might enhance as you grow older. However, some aspects of, let's say, your logical thinking might, they might become a little weaker as you grow older in age. Okay, all of these psychological assessments, they are categorized in a variety of ways. There are several ways in which these are, tested, and it'll be interesting to explore it as we go. Okay, enough said. There are some definitions which we must explore. So, of course, you guys keep wondering about what intelligence really means, right? So so there have been a lot of people who've debated about what is more intelligent or what is less intelligent. And to be able to understand this better, we're going to have to explore some of the definitions which already exist, right? Let's just do this together. So here's unraveling the definition of intelligence. Here we go. Intelligence is actually the global capacity to understand the world, to think very rationally, use available resources effectively whenever we are faced with a challenge. So it is said to be a global measure which takes care of your general cognitive competence as well as your ability to profit from schooling. Now, this is the CBSE NCERT's definition, and I will be cut it. So this is the CBSE NCERT's definition, and I will be glad if you guys can actually learn each of these keywords to help you profit from that CBSE exam you have to write at the end of the year. Let's explore the next keyword, which is called as aptitude. So what really is aptitude? Do you remember taking an aptitude test when you were coming from grade 10 to say grade 11? Yeah. So aptitude basically measures your underlying potential, guys. Pause. Cut it. Cut all of this. I'm going to start from the keywords again. Okay, so I'll go to the first. I'm starting from here again. All right, I guess it's time to explore some definitions. We've been talking so much about one person being more intelligent than the other, but Okay, so we've been talking so much about one individual being more intelligent than another, but how do we know for sure? And so, way before, and listen to this as a story now, way before, there were a lot of individuals who debated about how an individual is more intelligent than another. What is it that makes people smarter? So, based out of these arguments and discussions, there were a lot of individuals who came with some important definitions about intelligence. Now, these definitions were not it all. They were not very watertight, but they came with other certain keywords which were necessary to understand the concept of intelligence. So we'll look at these definitions, and furthermore, we'll also understand some of these other attributes that we've been talking about in psychology. Okay, let's look at these together. And if you get confused, please pause. Please read the definition very carefully. It's essential that you underline these keywords in your textbook as I teach you about it, right? Reproducing the same essential keywords for your board exam will be very helpful to you to earn those marks you're rooting for. Let's go. So the very first definition that you get to see of psychology is about psychology being the global capacity of an individual to understand the world, to think very rationally, to use resources very effectively whenever we are faced with a challenge. So what do you guys think? Do you agree? Is intelligence that global capacity that is helping you to solve so many problems in such a meaningful way? Right? Think about this, because what it really does, guys, is that it becomes a global measure for you to look at anyone and tell whether if they're utilizing all of those cognitive competencies that they have, and are they really profiting from whatever they've used so far from their life and from school. Okay, so intelligence, to sum it all, is basically that holistic, that very wholesome ability of yours which you have generated from years and years of your training at school, as well as experiences which you've got from the people around you, right? And you've taken all of that, and then you're utilizing it to solve problems very effectively as and when you're faced with any challenge. Does that sound wholesome and interesting? Great. Please make sure to underline all of these keywords very, very carefully in your notebook, because you're going to have to write it exactly the same way for your board exam. So the next keyword we'll look at is aptitude. So what is aptitude? Do you guys remember taking a test when you were coming from grade 10 to grade 11, which helped determine whether if you should choose science as your mainstream or you should pick on maybe commerce or humanities? If you took that test was basically mapping your underlying potential. So all of us are born with some potentials. It's the way our brains are hardwired, or the genetics, would I say, passed out to you. Aptitude predominantly determines whether if you're going to be great at something you wish to choose, right? These tests are very carefully developed and built, and they help you to determine what is it that would help you prosper at the thing that you're choosing to do, or for acquiring a particular skill. Right? So for example, a person who is very high on mechanical aptitude can be trained to become a successful engineer. However, somebody who doesn't own that mechanical aptitude might not be able to acquire those skills very efficiently or effectively. That is aptitude, my friends. Cut. That is aptitude, my friends. The next interesting psychological attribute that we look at is interest. Okay, so interest, what do you know about interest? What can we say about interest? Can I say that interest is just about your preference? When I choose pink over blue, or when I choose strawberries over mango, or when I choose dolphins over horses, or when I choose a beach over a mountain, is that my set of preference? That preference is understood as my interest. It is my interest of engaging in a particular activity, event, or a situation or a circumstance over another or relative to another, right? That is what defines interest for us. Great. I think that we've done a couple of keywords and we'll pause here to understand your learning. There's this little thing that I love to do with you guys in my videos, which is that I have to know whether if you've been listening on very carefully. So I would like you to pause and I have a question for you which will flash on my screen. I need you to test your learning. Pull out a paper and notebook or a notebook or and a pencil and kindly look out for the answer. Either if you know the answer, write it out. If you don't, I'd be happy if you'd like to just maybe look it up, right? Or maybe go back in the video and check on the answer. Let's do it now. It's going to be helpful for you to learn this better. So here's me flashing at you your question. What is aptitude? Can we please take a minute to define aptitude? Write the answer down. It's time to look at the next definition. And exploring this together will be interesting because it's all about your personality. So, what is an individual's personality? Have you ever wondered? You use the word so often, but do you know what it truly really means? So, what is personality and what comes to your mind? Take a minute to think about this. Personality is defined as a relatively enduring characteristic of a specific person that makes him very distinct from the others, right? For example, I as an individual am very outgoing, but there are moments where I can feel quite withdrawn. So it is the capacity of me to feel the way I do based out of the circumstance or the situation that I'm planted in, right? That is personality. You can also identify some core traits of yours which identify you to be who you truly are. You can take a minute to do this now. Up next, we've got values. So all of us, we're raised, especially being in a collectivist country like India and within the Asian continent, we're all born with these values, right? They're all endorsed into us. They're literally infused into us by our own parents. So are there some values that each of us own, which are very dear to us? I would love for you to take a minute to think about, or maybe list out 2 values, which is something that you stand by. Once you're done listing it out, values, and if you look at it very carefully, you'll realize that values are those enduring beliefs about your ideal mode of behavior. You know how the society is always talking to you about the right way to behave, or the right way to be, or the right way to express yourself, or choosing the right time to speak. So some of these ideas include a lot of the right things to do, right? But these enduring beliefs, they do, of course, they have a component of morality into it, wherein there is this super consciousness, there is this belief about being absolutely conscientious. You always want to be doing things which kind of put you looking good in other people's eyes. So you want to display that to others. However, values is more than just that. Values are those very core beliefs which you specifically stand by. They are enduring because they're very lasting, and it is ideal for you before others, right? It could be ideal mode of behavior for others, but mostly, guys, if you hold on to values which are true to you, which make you feel good, will be greater in the long run. However, this is the definition which we all must follow. Okay, so please make sure again that you underline these important parts of the definition herewith. Great, how are we doing? This is the time for another Quizlet, right? I guess we've been studying a little bit, and I hope it's not been too very heavy for all of you. So let's take a bit of a pause here and let's just check out, let's just do a little Quizlet together. Like the older time, I'm going to flash the question on the screen for you, and you have to take a moment to answer the question. Ready, set, go. So, from the definition that we've looked at of intelligence, I would love for you to write it down on a piece of paper and test your learning. So, I'm sure that by now you're wondering and debating about the various and the plenty many definitions of intelligence. Maybe